I know many of you are asking yourselves, what is JP Incorporated? The answer might surprise you. It's top-notch products, high-quality items, service that speaks for itself. It's a family brand, an entertainment brand, a brand your friends can trust, and so much more.
Yes. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Houseless Podcast. My name is Peter Agustin. Welcome. Thank you for tuning in. We have a great episode today with my friend, my dear friend, JP Incorporated. JP Inc., JP Hassan, and Seattle native, now based in LA, but we recorded this in New York City. Yes, in Times Square at that. He's on tour with Tim and Eric as they crisscross North America on the Tim and Eric 10-year anniversary tour. You can see the tour dates at timanderic.com. JP, though, I've known for a long time, and you may know him too as a performer. First and foremost, originally as Plesiosaur, the Seattle, first it was a trio, then a duo, and then it merged into JP Incorporated, and I've worked with him as his agent for years. But I do want to send a special shout out to Michelle Cable from Panache Magazine, aka Panache Booking, who back when I lived in Humboldt County, California, in Arcata, JP used to come and did a lot of shows, and that's how I was introduced to his music, and that's how we met each other. It was really through shows in the Humboldt area in the late 90s, early 2000s, and he's been touring a lot. But he also, most recently, in recent years, works as a tour manager and as a production manager, a tour producer for the likes of Tim and Eric, as well as Eric Andre, Dimitri Martin. He's done some stuff with Judd Apatow, rather. There's another, if you're hip to this group, Ninja Sex Party, JP works with them as well. So I caught him the day after show of Tim and Eric at the Town Hall in New York City, and we talk about his beginnings as Plesiosaur and how it kind of evolved to where he is today. And it was great. It was a good conversation. I love the guy. I've known him for a long time. He's one of the kindest, realist kind of people I know in music, and we've done a lot of stuff together. We did a tour with Devo years back. And he's also just a brilliant comedic writer in mind, who I don't think gets the proper due. But it's interesting how his career has sort of evolved into sort of working behind the scenes, too. Anyway, we're going to get into this in one moment. Before that, I want to pay some dues for the podcast for the sake of the house list. Yes, it's my weekly podcast. My name is Peter Agustin. You can subscribe on iTunes, on SoundCloud, it's on Stitcher, Google Play, and YouTube. So you can find it in many different ways, in a myriad of ways, in fact. And I implore you to get the word out, spread the word. If you're on SoundCloud, hit that repost button. If you, whatever medium you choose to listen to it, feel free to copy and paste it and send it to a friend. Be like, remember Plesiosaur? Remember when we saw him at the Vista in Eureka, California in 1999? Yes, of course. Well, hey, check this out. He was on the Houseless with Peter Agustin, a.k.a. Thanksgiving Brown. What a great conversation they had. Check it out. So with that being said, I just want to get the word out. This is something I do, self-produced, edited by CJ Stewart in Humboldt. And let's get the word out. And without further ado, let's check out my conversation with the one and only JP Incorporated. So I was at your show last night, at the show that you guys are doing, and I was kind of thinking how it sort of contrasts. So it's like Tim and Eric's like 10-year anniversary, and I was thinking so much about your work, like the work that you were doing both when we were sort of doing tours together, but even really when I first met you in Humboldt. And
a long time ago.
Yeah, it was. I know. It doesn't. I guess it doesn't really feel like it, but if you start thinking about everything that happens in between, you know,
that was probably 18, 19 years ago.
yeah,
So
yeah. I guess that was a long time ago.
yeah.
Yeah, it's 2000, pretty much.
Yeah, I mean, I think I played in Humboldt for the first time. In Eureka was probably early 1999.
Wow.
Yeah.
Were you booking all your own? Were you working as your own booking agent at the time?
Yeah, I was. I had been living in Philadelphia, and I was there for like a year and a half.
Oh, okay.
And
I didn't realize that.
What's that?
I didn't realize that.
Yeah, that's when I was in a band with one of the guys from the Dead Milkmen.
Yeah.
And then kind of when that band ceased, I moved back to Seattle, where I'm from.
Right.
And I got sort of a glorified internship at Polygram.
Oh, really?
And was doing like kind of like concert marketing. I was like meet and greet rep for Mercury Records, Def Jam, Island.
Out of Seattle?
For the Seattle off for like the Northwest office.
Oh, so when they were coming through the area.
So any act that was coming through the area, I would be the label rep.
Wow.
And so my first assignment was Kiss. The first Kiss reunion tour of 1997, I think.
Wow.
And 96 or 97. And so I was barely being paid. And so
Sure.
I thought that they owed it to me to allow me to I essentially would call people from the office and say I was from Mercury Records, and I would say I have this hot new act called Plesiosaur, and they need a show. And I booked myself a U.S. tour
Wow.
in 1997, and I mean it was a mess. It was just like, it was like $50 guarantees, whatever.
Right.
We were just having fun. And
Just off the landline from the office.
off the landline from the office, and I was like, I had their Polestar, and I
Nice, man.
just did it,
Yeah.
and I was cold calling people,
So wait, what was the band in Philadelphia? Because had you guys been playing shows there? You obviously probably had some sort of prowess to playing.
Yeah. So that story is I was obsessed with the Dead Milkmen as a kid. My friends that I grew up with in Washington State, we were all like obsessed with them, and they toured through Seattle in 1991, and they were doing an on-air performance at a radio station prior to their show, and it was a radio station called The End. It was like a commercial station.
The End.
The End, 107.7. And it was, the DJ was this guy, Marco Collins, who wound up, he broke Nirvana and Beck and Pearl Jam, and like, very influential guy in he was like the Dick Clark of, sort of alternative grunge music shit. So in the early days of that station, my friends and I we would call in late at night, and he would let us play our songs like over the air live.
Like over the phone?
Like over the phone.
Wow.
Like we were in my bedroom and we'd like play our songs.
Oh, like not like holding up to a tape deck.
No,
or
we were
anything
like playing our songs. We didn't have any recordings.
That's awesome.
So anyway, he thought we were like these silly dorky kids from the woods, which we were. And so anyway, long story short, the Dead Milkmen were coming through, and we knew they were going to be on Marco's show. And we went into the city, took the ferry boat, went into the city, just like kept buzzing the door buzzer of the radio station.
Wait, you took the boat. So what are you, living on Orcas Island or something like that?
South of Orcas Island.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh.
I grew up in a little teeny town called Indianola, which is like maybe 1,000 people.
Cool. My brother lived on Orcas Island.
Okay.
For like a year or two.
Yeah, so it's not part of the San Juans, but
Yeah.
it was on the Kitsap Peninsula.
Cool. Interesting.
And, So you take the ferry to downtown. We walked up to the radio station, kept buzzing the buzzer, and finally somebody they didn't ask who we were, they just buzzed us in, and we went up. And like we're knocking on the fucking door of the radio station, and they let us in, and they let us be the on-air audience for
Oh,
the
wow.
Dead Milkmen. And so we met them and like shot the shit, and then went to the show that night. And after the show, I went up to the guitar player Joe, and I said, and I was 15, and I was like, I wrote you guys a letter to your fan club, but I never got anything. Like, I never got a newsletter or anything.
Right.
And he's like, oh, whatever. He's like, I'll send you a postcard. Like, give me your address. And I didn't think I'd ever hear from him.
Right. Of course. Yeah.
And a week later, I get this postcard, and we became pen pals. He was pen pals with a bunch of folks like during his main touring years.
Yeah.
And
So he sent it from the road.
he sent it from the road. He sent it from like California or something.
Wow.
And of course, I took that and just ran with it. And we were sending letters all the time back and forth. And at that time, I had started making these sort of improvised musical comedy records in my garage with my friend Ben. And those were the first Plesiosaur albums.
Were you calling it that?
It was called Plesiosaur.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. So I would send them to the band, to the Dead Milkmen, and they'd be like, "This is fucked. This is like so weird." And so over the course of some correspondence and like sort of talking about doing something together,
Right.
they invited me, or Joe invited me out for a summer in 1994, and he and I did a record together, a duo called "We're Not From Idaho."
Oh, wow.
And so that was between my junior and senior year of high school.
That's amazing.
And yeah, it was like my parents let me go.
What was it? Where'd you record it? Like in the...
At his house, like
Cool.
in their rehearsal place.
It's like a 4-track style? Or?
Totally 4-track, Tascam,
Yeah.
488 or whatever it was. And
That's awesome.
straight to cassette, 4-track. And it was... For him, I don't know. It was probably just like something to do for a couple weeks.
Yeah.
For me, it was everything,
Yeah.
And so we did that, and it was just like a tape we made.
Yeah.
But it was a really fun collaboration. And then I came back, finished my last year of high school, and throughout that year, he had a side project called Touch Me Zoo with which was also another duo he had, and he wanted to expand it to be a full band. So they got a drummer. They invited me to move out there and be the bass player, and I did it. I moved out there like 2 weeks after I graduated high school.
Wow.
So, and we toured a little bit and did a lot of shows and opened for like some really great bands. And
You came to New York, I would assume, played
Yeah.
in New York. Mm-hmm. What were the venues? Do you remember where you played? This is what, 96 or 95?
this was 95, 96. So our first show was at the Trocadero in Philadelphia.
Cool.
Yeah, opening for the Rentals.
Wow.
Remember the Rentals?
Of course.
Yeah. And that
That's
was
awesome.
it was like first show we were playing in front of 1,000 people.
Right.
And that was, for me, that was incredible,
That is pretty incredible considering that like you've toured a lot since then. Like
Yes. So that was really the first real authentic wave of like actually doing shows where there were people.
right. So it's definitely a little different when you go back out on your own as Plesiosaur, obviously.
Yeah. So then we were all really young, and the band kind of fizzled, and I moved back to Seattle and decided to do Plesiosaur in earnest, and that's when I worked at Mercury and schemed my way through booking a tour.
So how long did the label job then last for? Because when you
I
started
was there a couple years.
Yeah. Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, amazing. So
And
then-
I worked with Kiss and Bon Jovi and like fucking Wilson Phillips and like all the, so it was really interesting because I really wanted to immerse myself and learn as much as I could,
Right.
so that I could be armed, because I knew that what I was doing was so stupid and so just like I needed as much information and data in order to make it work or to even get booked.
Right.
You know what I
I
mean?
mean, to apply it to your own thing, because this is
Exactly.
like 90s major label rock,
Everything
commercial
was like,
radio.
totally.
Like, there's probably a lot of money being spent on.
Yeah, and I wasn't
marketing.
doing it for delusions of getting like a record deal.
Right.
I just wanted to be educated on that, and I never went to college, so like this whole thing was my schooling,
Yeah.
you know.
So so then stepping into Plesiosaur, I mean, how do you, what was that experience going that first tour? I mean, you clearly were your own TM then.
Well,
I'm
yeah,
not
I mean the
mistaken.
first tour was 3 people in an Acura, and we were just like driving around.
Right.
And there were shows, like I had friends in various places and they would
Sure.
come. But the first show I ever did in San Francisco, I got a show at the Hotel Utah,
Right.
and
Remember that spot?
it was, like at least I got a show booked. Like,
Yeah, it's an important first step.
totally. And the deal was I got 100% of the door. It's a
Okay.
$5 cover. And one guy showed up. His name was Salad. I will never forget it. His name was Salad Von Bako. And he was, he learned about Plesiosaur through the Dead Milkmen, just like through message boards and stuff.
Wow.
And he showed up, and I got paid $5 that night. And then as we were leaving, there was a bum outside, and we gave him $5. And then we
Nice.
like slept in the car in like Pismo Beach or something.
Yeah, that's a classic. Those were the days for sure.
Yeah.
Sleeping in the car. Yeah, I did some of that.
And you have to. I mean, it was.
Well, yeah. I mean, you have $0.
We had literally $0.
And this is before. I mean, you
I had
probably
saved up. Like this is when you used to have to you have to save up in order to go on tour.
Sure.
You know.
Yeah, you work a job and you save up, and then you go on tour, and then you go back to your job, and
Totally.
You know.
Yeah.
And it's maybe before you really had established any history with like promoters.
There was
and-
no fan base. There was
Right.
like, yeah.
What was the music? Because it was the first CD or the first release was the beef flavored island.
The first one was it was called As Seen on TV.
Oh right,
Yeah.
that was the yellow cover.
No, that was the one. It came inside of a furry, the white fur, like, and then inside the spine of the CD, it had these calcium capsules.
Yeah, I don't have that one.
Yeah, it was weird.
Wow.
It was a beautiful package. It had like vellum, and it like there was all this layering to it.
You did it all too, right?
That one, I did the art, but the sort of design layout was myself and this guy Ben.
Right.
Yeah.
So he was that was the guy that was rolling with you for those kind of first.
No, that was
right.
Tommy.
Oh wow. Okay. So
Yeah, but Tommy was in that first tour. It was me, Ben, and Tommy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because that's when I first saw you. Was when I think it was just more. It was this maybe the second kind of out.
Yeah,
like-
because that first tour was me on stage, and I just brought them as friends to like hang out. We were
Yeah.
going on a road trip, and it was me on stage in an black and silver Evel Knievel jumpsuit, with a DAT machine.
Really?
Yeah, no screen, no visual component, nothing. Just
Wow.
like me singing songs
With a DAT.
to a DAT.
That's
It was pro. It
something
was
else.
like pro gear.
Yeah, see, that's a great tidbit you learned from the major label
Had
world.
XLR outs. You know?
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, because the stage shows had already evolved a little bit by the time I saw you play.
Yeah, and so then after that, my sort of group of friends had befriended this guy he was older than us. His name was Dale Travis, and he did. He's like a mad scientist, artist guy, and he did some stuff at Bumbershoot in Seattle called Dr. Electric's House of Shock.
Okay.
And he built Tesla coils.
Oh, wow, okay.
And he built all the stuff for like Man or Astro Man, and
Cool.
and we like became obsessed with this guy and sort of tracked him down, and we used to hang out in his laboratory all the time, which was down the street, and he really loved the concept of how stupid Plesiosaur was and how it was just like essentially just like gibberish.
Right.
And it was really his idea to have 2 big screens and have overhead projectors.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
And it was like a suggestion in passing.
Right.
But I have to give him credit for it because like I wouldn't have thought of it, I don't think. And so we were showing like film strips and totally unrelated images.
Oh, okay.
And then slowly I started designing like actual pieces of art to correspond with what I was saying, because like, fuck, wouldn't that be helpful, right?
Yeah, I mean, yeah. Because otherwise it could be a little confusing with
It was
other
so confusing. I don't know why anybody would like stay in the room while this thing was happening.
Right.
It was so weird.
Yeah, because I mean, again, like that's what really got me when I first saw it in Humboldt. You had the overhead projectors and the and like the gels or the silhouettes, and it's like it wasn't. I don't know what you would call it. I mean, it was close to what like a puppet show would kind of be like, but there was
like a slideshow,
Yeah,
a puppet
slideshow.
show. It was art, but it was like modular and
right.
morphing live, and you could use the the focus and the transparency,
right.
and like you could bring things into focus.
Yeah.
And that was a really neat. And originally there were 2 people behind the screen, so it was
Right.
Tommy and Ben.
Okay,
and
yeah.
they both did it at the same time, and I would get myself in and out of these costumes,
Yeah.
and
Oh yeah, because you even had the the curtain, like this kind of
silver curtain.
Yeah. Like glittery, sequency.
And that was the idea, is that I liked being in the world of kind of rock and roll, punk rock or
Right.
whatever, but putting on a show that was so out of place. And like, why would anybody see essentially like a Broadway, like a really cheap Broadway musical
Right.
at a seafood restaurant in Eureka, California?
Right.
You know what I mean? Opening for the bass player from the Melvins.
Was that the tour?
Yeah, with Thrones.
Nice.
Yeah.
At the Vista, I'm
At the
guessing.
Vista.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, what a great classic venue that was.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't make sense. And even thinking about it now, there's
no way you could have thought about the end, that you could have invented the end point.
right.
It was something that had to evolve.
Oh, for sure. Well, obviously, even at that point, it had evolved
It
from
already,
yeah,
from nothing,
right,
and then to like barely anything, and then to actually something where it's sort of, there was a story arc, throughout the show that was
right.
like,
The albums were kind of conceptual in a way too.
they were
obviously.
very conceptual, yeah.
So were you like, when you were at home doing this, like, were you like, how would you build out the actual show? Because it has to be pretty methodically like put together. By the time it's like really moving, like maybe a year or 2 into it. Because for me, again, like I think I didn't see you play until 2000 or 2001. And I'm really trying to figure out the first time I saw you, because I lived in Portland before I went to Humboldt. So I know it was somewhere in between, like, to the year 2000, I guess. But
Well, I remember I saw your name when we rolled into town to do a show in Eureka. I would play Eureka like 2-3 times a year,
right,
you know? And
it was in that circuit. It was a reliable place to play.
it was reliable. You could play it, and people would come.
Yeah,
And they were nice, and everybody was welcoming.
yeah, definitely. It's
And
very out of the way, you know. If like,
yeah, it's off the beaten path,
right.
but it made sense. I mean, I lived in the Northwest, so if
Yeah.
I wanted to play in San Francisco or L.A. or whatever, like, why not take an extra day and play in Eureka?
Right.
So,
Sure.
some bands did like Chico and Sacramento.
Yeah.
I played Eureka.
Yeah, it's either you go off the 5 or the 101.
Yeah.
And I mean there was a scene that was really thriving, I think, around that period of time, especially for experimental music and rock bands and sort of like in the world that you kind of came out of, because there was a few other your contemporaries all did well in that town too.
Sure.
You know.
Yeah.
But did we meet at a show?
Well, no, I remember coming through town and passing the Red Lion Hotel on the 101 South lanes
Right.
and seeing the marquee, and it said was DJ Thanksgiving Brown. And I like stopped the fucking car and I was like, what is that? And whatever it is, I want to know about it.
That's hilarious.
And so when we got to the show, it was a show that Michelle from Panache put on, and you know, to promote her magazine or whatever she was doing.
Yeah,
She was up
because the
to
shows were
something.
really like, they were centered around like fundraisers for benefits for her magazine.
Totally.
Yeah.
And which was cool. Like, everybody had this like ulterior art project
Yeah.
that they were trying to support.
Definitely.
You know, and Plesiosaur seemed to fit right into that
Oh,
scheme.
you might as well have lived there, because there was
Yeah.
a lot of people that were connected with that
Yeah.
artistic kind of mania, you know?
Yeah, but in this like kind of outsider art way of
Yeah.
people who I don't really. It seemed like people who were out, didn't fit in a
Oh,
certain
for sure.
scene or one specific scene. Like they crossed over to.
Yeah, well, geographically, they fit. They don't fit in like to like
Totally.
any major market or
Yeah.
major metropolitan area, and it's such a transient town. Especially then too. It was this school. The university was much smaller too, so the
Yeah.
people there. It was a lot of locals that were there that were going to the shows too. I mean,
Yeah.
And when I moved there, I didn't know anybody, and it was definitely a trip, like kind of acclimating to that town, because I went there for school basically. I mean, I sort of stumbled into it, but and DJing, and I'm trying to remember DJing at the Red Lion, because it's like a motel and shit.
It's like the biggest hotel in town, but
Right.
it's like not the best.
No, not at all. They had like a lounge, like a
They had a lounge.
70s like
Yeah.
kind of smokers lounge.
Totally, and I thought that would be like a really interesting place to play, and I always wanted to try to play there, but I never made it happen.
Yeah,
There was also a Denny's that was doing shows.
I
and
DJ'd there too.
Yeah, I really, really wanted to play at the Denny's.
Yeah.
But that never worked out.
In theory, it sounded a lot cooler than what it was. I mean,
Oh, yeah, totally.
it would have worked. It would have been very cool for you to play there for sure. I didn't always have the greatest experiences in those places, but I mean, you did play like the kind of historic venues of that time, the Vista,
Played
the
at the
Alibi.
Vista. Alibi did the one in Samoa.
Yeah, well, the Placebo.
Did the Placebo. Did the
The Samoan. Well, you did
like
my
the
like
art center. or
Yeah,
whatever.
you did the big room, which is a
Yeah.
rare place to see shows, because you did
And a
my,
lot of people came.
for sure. You did my last show I ever did there in Humboldt, right before I moved.
Where was that?
It was the one. It was at Samoa.
Oh, okay.
I'm pretty sure.
Okay.
I'm pretty certain, because I remember the flyer. Because it was around that time that maybe we did the American Sheriff show, like right around that time.
Yes,
we
and
doubled up a little bit,
Yeah.
which was amazing. Yeah. Well, I mean, we could talk about Humboldt forever. But yeah, I'm just love to talk a little bit more about that. Yeah, about that time for Plesiosaur too, because it was so unusual, but it did like sort of fit into a kind of like a scene that was developing, and like with sort of out there comedy stuff. I mean, that's such like a kind of blasé way to like frame it in a way, but
It was early for that kind of thing,
Right.
And so I think that's why there was a lot of people who hated it.
Oh,
a lot
for
of
sure.
people who were like really resistant.
yeah, they were antagonized by like
How zany it was,
Yeah.
and how nonsensical it was, and
yeah. I mean, it's the same with like Neil Hamburger. I mean, Neil Hamburger started around that time too, as like and his thing has evolved incredibly since
Totally.
like the prank call thing, you know. And,
But it was I found a lot of camaraderie in I was a big fan of Neil's records, his first two records, and I had this habit of tracking people down, and kind of like how I was so proactive with Joe from the Milkmen,
right.
and the first guy I really tracked down was Buckethead.
Oh shit! Right. He was the kind of like he was
Very reclusive,
Yep.
very elusive,
yes,
and hard. Nobody knew who he was.
but also such an interesting kind of facet of that sort of scene of like
Of
outsider
art,
metal,
metal, concept,
totally.
you know. And I loved his record. Somebody made a compilation tape for me, and it put some songs on there. And I was just obsessed with this one album he did for Sony Japan, and it was so crazy.
Do you remember what it was called?
I think it was called Giant Robot, but he also did like 4 albums called Giant Robot, so it's kind of hard to figure out. But
Yeah, Buckethead. Wow.
so I called for about 2 years. I found out who his attorney was.
Okay.
It was this guy Stan Diamond in L.A.
Of course.
Like, it was such a classic L.A. like lawyer name, Stan Diamond.
Oh yeah.
And I called Stan Diamond's office once a month. I was like, here's who I am. I'm looking for Buckethead. 2 years later, it was like 8:30 in the morning. Phone rings. I wake up, and they're like, oh, hey, is JP there? This is Buckethead. And I thought it was a friend, like, pranking me. Right?
Sure.
And he finally called me back. And he's like, I finally put 2 and 2 together. Somebody had put some of my songs on a mix for him.
Oh wow.
And he's like, I've heard that you do a crazy thing. And I was like, we need to do some shows together. And he hadn't really done any shows yet.
Oh wow, really?
And so he had done some. He was in that band Praxis also, with Bill Laswell and stuff with Bernie Worrell, and
Which is kind of a different ilk in a way, right?
yeah, that was more like weird prog noise metal kind of thing.
Right.
But the Buckethead entity itself was like, to me, it was like an art piece.
Well, yeah, he had a KFC bucket on his head. You know,
Yeah,
that
but his
too.
first shows were like solo. It was him with the DAT machine playing guitar.
Really?
And so I was like, yeah, we need to do this tour of like 2 one-man shows, and it'll be real lean and mean, and we're going to have a great time.
Yeah.
And so I booked it. I booked us a West Coast tour, and it was like kind of shitty.
Did people
came.
People were familiar with him?
Oh yeah, people came.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, we were getting maybe 300 people a night.
Not bad.
And we played Seattle, Portland, San Francisco, LA.
Cool.
And then we did some more extensive touring throughout the years. But and then Neil Hamburger was the next one that I tracked down. I found him in Australia.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
How'd you find his music?
Neil's?
Yeah.
Well,
Or music. I mean,
his albums.
Yes.
My roommate, the guy Joey that I grew up with, his dad has this massive record collection, and was always buying new music and comedy and stuff.
Yeah.
And Joey came home from hanging out with his dad one day, and he's like, "You have to hear this record." And it was America's Funny Man, his first full-length album.
Yeah.
And I was dying as it was incredible. It blew my mind. And I figured out who his like fake manager was, and I emailed this person relentlessly, and he finally wrote me back, and I was like, "You should do shows." And he's like, "Okay."
Was he just a recording? He was just
He
recording.
was
the
just
album?
recording, and I think he had done a couple shows in Australia.
Well, he comes from out of bands though too, right? I mean, he was a musician.
Oh yeah, he was in like crazy San Francisco scene. He was in a band, the Zip Code Rapists. He did stuff with. He used to tour manage for Mr. Bungle.
Oh, amazing!
He was
Another great Humboldt connection.
totally.
Yeah.
And Meat Puppets, like that whole thing. He toured with them for years.
Yeah, amazing.
And so our first show together was in, I think, 2000 in Bellingham.
Nice.
And in like the most disgusting place you've ever seen.
Perfect.
And I remember I was really nervous to do a show with him. And I remember there were like maybe 50 people there.
Right.
And I remember I was just like locked on him in the audience. And he had this look on his face the whole time, like what is this? And I was bummed. I was like, oh, he's not liking it at all, and I want him to like it so much.
Right.
You know? And then after right after, between me and him, he was like getting ready, and he's like, that was insane. He's like, I'm in love with it. And it just made my day. And he and I have become, I would consider him to be like a family member now.
Yeah, you guys are super close.
Super close.
You've done countless tours together.
He and I have done, I would say maybe 200-300 shows together.
That's amazing.
So
I'm such a fan of his performance. I mean, I feel like every time I see him, it's like almost like the first time all over again. And just...
Yeah, he's so... I respect him because, for many reasons, but he's constantly doing new material.
Yeah, which is
about dated things.
Yeah,
which is amazing. But he also he peppers in his old stuff too.
Yeah.
But he packages it in a different way.
Right.
Every time, and his easements in and out of the material from new to old or concept to concept is like really interesting to me.
Yeah, that's a great way to frame that too. Yeah, because some of those bits he's been doing for a while.
Yeah, Red Hot Chili Peppers,
Courtney Love, and they never get old. Fun. Yeah, they're just the topical, known
Houston.
Yeah. Well, and just I have so much respect for anyone that can disengage from the crowd or antagonize an audience and be totally like impervious to it whatsoever. Like there's a great art in that too. And you guys, it's interesting because of what having just seen the Tim and Eric show last night and how that they obviously play. They've obviously like influenced a lot of younger comedians, I guess, if you will, and sketch writers and stuff like that. But they're part of that lineage too, without a doubt. That you guys were. Coming from regionally from different places, but
I always feel like with Tim and I had some overlap. We never knew each other, but when I left Philadelphia, he's from that area.
Oh, that's right.
We deduced that he took over my job at this like shitty college recruitment video distribution center.
Really?
When I moved back to Seattle, he took my job.
Huh.
And we figured that out at dinner like 10 years later.
Wow.
And so
okay.
I always feel like we would have been friends if we grew up together. we were all cut from the same cloth. Like,
For sure.
you know what I mean?
Absolutely.
So, and to me, that's why I get compared to them a lot. And I mean, I doubt that they get compared to me because they're far more well known than I am. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but the median is like, as far as the performance goes and the way,
It's all right there.
yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, short form, parody,
Yeah.
video, and music, like
Yeah.
engaged into one another. It's exactly the same genre.
Totally.
You know.
Yeah.
I think that's why, like, because I was familiar with your work, well before theirs, and really because it sort of predates the internet, because it's really comes from that touring, that punk, DIY, very West Coast style of like touring. So in like with Plesiosaur and Neil Hamburger, and then like Wesley Willis and Grand Buffet, and but then there's like stuff like the more experimental shit. I mean, even like a Buckethead is such a great like facet of that. Just outsider, non-traditional, but touring in shitty rock dive bars and stuff like that. And that,
We weren't necessarily doing it because we wanted to.
sure,
You know,
I get that.
We all would have been playing like beautiful jewel box theaters if we
Right.
could,
right?
but it's just what we knew
Yeah, and
and what we had access to.
Yeah, it's access is everything
Yeah.
too. I mean, the fact that you can pull off like the slide projector with like a curtain and like countless costume changes like in a 45-minute set in like 150 capacity like dive bar,
And then pack it all in a minivan and move on.
yeah,
For relatively low cost.
for sure.
Yeah,
Yeah, and like sleep on people's couches and floors and shit.
totally.
Yeah. So I mean, it's in that same world. I mean, that's why I think it's so fascinating too, because those watching, since it's a retrospective of what Tim and Eric are doing too, watching those old sketches, which there is some crossover from what you guys what when you were touring, especially as Plesiosaur turns into like JP Incorporated too. It's it's all the same to me, because too musically and conceptually there's a lot of similarities, like as far as like where the gags are at, I guess, in a way, for lack of a better word. And I'm trying to find an interesting bridge into that too, because I guess really how does the Plesiosaur thing turn into JP Incorporated? Because that's really, we have like a second chapter of us knowing each other too, because we started really working on booking shows together.
Yeah. So I was touring so much as Plesiosaur.
Yeah.
I was touring, opening for much bigger bands.
Right.
And that was always the thing, was that people, it wasn't very popular, but the right people liked it
Right.
and wanted a crazy opening act.
Right.
And I was cheap. You know what I mean? Like $500 a night got it done.
Sure.
You know what I mean? Like that was a lot of money.
Right.
And so I think I was touring with the President's of the United States,
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, Seattle band.
Seattle band, and they had hits, and they were still able. This was 2004 or 5. They were still able to do 1,200, 1,500 people a night.
Wow. Yeah.
And I played in New York with them, and a friend of a friend knew somebody who was the president of Comedy Central Records, and sent this guy out. And he came up to me after the show, and he's like, "What would it take to have you do a record for us?" And in my mind, I was thinking, well, not much.
Yeah.
But I had, he's like, let's talk in a few days. He's like, finish this little leg of your tour and let's hop on the phone. And so I wound up signing a deal with Comedy Central. They did what wound up being kind of not like a greatest hits, but like it was a lot like all the old songs
For Plesiosaur. Right.
I re-recorded them. There was a DVD with it.
Yeah.
I made a cartoon, and I regret that I did it that way.
Really? Why is that? The
Because
presentation of it, or
it wasn't ready to be released, and I didn't know any better.
right.
And I rushed it, and I am still, it still bothers me. You know.
Why?
So-
Because the opportunity was there, and you wanted to take advantage of it, right? Or,
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. And I think I tried to do too much in too little time, and it was a very ambitious project. I mean, we did a 30-minute fully animated cartoon
Right.
with like 12 music videos that were all woven together, and then I had to redo all these songs.
Yeah, it's a lot.
And the animators were like fucking amazing, overworked. It was all the guys who did C Lab 2021
Yeah.
and now Archer.
Oh, amazing.
And I paid them barely anything. I mean, there was no money, but they were all like the nicest people. Like, I am eternally grateful for their work.
Yeah.
I'm sure they're still sleeping it off because like it was such a grind.
Right.
But you know, like, we had to cut some corners and like whatever. And it was a learning experience to like really it was a hard lesson to learn
Yeah.
with what I thought were big stakes. You know what I
Right,
mean?
right.
Like, it was essentially my big major label effort.
Yeah, because before that, it was these kind of totally small.
I
labels.
I was essentially self-releasing
Sure.
them.
Because Imputer, that was just you, right?
No, it was two other guys from California, and they were doing like weird electronic music,
Right.
but they had distribution, and they're like, do whatever you want, we'll distribute it,
Right.
put our logo on there.
But yeah, nevertheless, I mean, Comedy Central, especially Comedy Central Records at that time, they were putting out like, big comedy.
They were
albums.
winning Grammys. They
Yeah.
were, and like the success of Dane Cook and
Right.
all these big people allowed this guy to release the like really weird stuff. And I think most of the people there didn't like what I was doing because nobody was doing anything like that. It was before Tim and Eric's show. It was
Yeah.
before the big wave of Adult Swim kind of stuff.
Yeah, it predates that for sure.
And there was always this discussion of, let's do this record, let's do this DVD, and we'll kind of keep it in the conversation as to maybe develop something for television.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, I always thought that was like the...
there was never any traction,
Right.
which is fine. Like, I at one point wanted to have a TV show. I don't think I do anymore.
Right.
So anyway, it was like probably their least successful release, but that's fine. That's
Yeah.
okay.
Well, then, yeah, that's totally fine. I mean, you're still standing. I mean...
Yeah, and so then the guy that I was touring with a lot, he and I stopped working together around that time, right shortly after that, and Comedy Central came to me and said, "Well, we want you to do another record, but why don't we blow this thing up? And I think you should try something totally new."
Okay.
And so, I did that. Like, and my dad was my main source of like support for that thing. My family, really, in advice and my dad's messaging to me was always like, he's like, you're doing this thing that it had evolved into me coming up with things that I think people are gonna like.
Yeah, okay.
And I wasn't doing it just to do it. It wasn't a true expression anymore.
Yeah.
And that's when all the fucked up stuff was so good, was when I was just like doing it.
Sure, of course.
Like anything.
Yeah.
And I started overthinking it, and so he's like, you need to totally redo this thing. So I did it. I called it, I wanted to do something really generic and where I could really do anything I wanted at any time. So I called it JP Incorporated, which is about as generic as it can be.
Yeah.
And I did a record for them. And
Yeah, for Comedy Central.
For Comedy Central. I really liked it. It was really fun to do.
It's funny.
And thank you. And it was all these like fake TV theme songs.
Yeah.
And then started touring that.
Did you produce it all?
Yeah.
You did all the instrumentation and all that?
I did most of it. There are some songs that were like fucked up MIDI files that I found and like totally redid.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Like I would find some like Romanian home composers like MIDI file database.
Right.
And I would like take his shit work and dump it into my computer and then like move everything around.
Yeah. Like
And
kind of chop it up and resequence it or something, or
yeah, but it wasn't like I would take like he would have like a neat progression,
Right.
And I would take that and put it in another song,
Right.
Or, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it was really just to get the like MIDI data.
Yeah.
It wasn't the notes themselves,
Right.
Really.
Yeah, because
That
there's
makes
some
sense.
pretty, like, I listened to it very recently, and there's some pretty interesting, like, you know, I guess this is telling of any of TV themes of the 70s and 80s, really, but, like, melodies and harmonies and stuff that are, like, you know.
There's some really catchy songs on that record.
Yeah.
That are like
Absolutely.
total brain worms.
Oh, big time. I mean, Billy Hardwood is probably, that one's pretty infectious.
And
Yeah. What else? What do you recall from making that? Because they're all like similar to Tim and Eric. They're all like less than a minute or about a minute and stuff like that. They're short form.
Just silly. Just like there's really nothing there. It's like not a TV show you'd want to watch,
Right.
necessarily. And I had worked on it with this guy Rob Crow, who's in the band Pinback.
Right.
And he was always a real big champion of Plesiosaur. In when I would play in San Diego, he would always be there front row. He was just so into it, but he would always complain. And I would Plesiosaur open for Pinback a lot, 'cause they liked having fucked up openers.
Yeah.
And that would antagonize their audiences. And then, but he would always complain to me. He'd be like, "Your records, like, you need to make better records, and I can't hear your vocals, like, blah blah blah."
Right. Yeah. Better produced records.
Records.
Right.
And he's like, "When you do another record, can I please record it? At least be the producer of the vocal sessions." And so I went down to his house, and we did like 2 weeks, and it was spread out over the course of a little while, and it was night and day. He had nice microphones.
Yeah.
He knew how to like rally me. He knew like it would take like just the right amount of like beer to get me like, in this certain mood.
Sure.
And
Well, you're doing a lot of different voices too.
Totally.
You're Crap Factory, and like the Steves and shit. Like there's like 6 or 7 characters.
And it was us like staying up all night
Right.
and just having a blast and laughing
Right.
and and it was the first time I had collaborated really with a person like that in that capacity.
Right.
For this kind of material. So
Because then those shows, it's like that's what kind of turns into like how you sort of do live shows now in a way, right? Like
it's
one-man
now,
show.
It's now a one-man show. I have a big video screen.
Yeah.
The overhead projector, slide projector component turned into videos that I make, and then I like sing to the tracks, and it's more of like a corporate presentation now.
Yeah.
Which is a fun angle to do.
definitely, but you remain in that one character the whole time
Now it's
instead
just
of like
one character instead of like 10 costumes. Yeah.
Do you still have those old costumes? Mm-hmm. You have that big like woolly mammoth one, abominable snowman one.
Abominable Snowman. It's in my garage.
Nice.
Yeah.
For 1 minute, I want to talk about American Sheriff, just because that's your most slept on album. I feel like, but you were selling it. I think you made the album. You were selling on the road or whatever. But so the concept is what it's like, just basically like like from the perspective of like a highway, like a small town sheriff or something like that. Like,
Well, it was me and this guy Darren. He was one of the guys who ran the Imputer label, and he was he had found these like production records and of production music, but like pretty old.
right?
And he started fucking with them, and then I was at his house one night, and I think I just like improvised something to tape, and about like a police officer who was also like a farmer or something. Like it was
There's like a country theme, right?
Yeah,
an
and so-
Americana thing.
Yeah, it's essentially like two sheriffs from some like backwoods county who do like a country rap album,
Yes.
you know. But all the songs are about, you know, police work and farming and animals and things like that.
It's
So-
like a very American record. You know?
yeah, it's really silly,
Yeah.
but
There was a video for it too, right? Or
No, we never did a video. No, but the album was released on a piece of wood. It was like a plank of like plywood, and then we had these like little silicone nubs, and then the CD like sat on that.
Oh hell yeah! I think I remember that.
Yeah.
Because it's like the two eagle head sheriffs with like their sheriff hats and shit.
Yeah, and we did a few shows.
Yeah, no, we did one at the Alibi. I DJ for you.
Yeah.
Which was a very memorable experience. So then, are you doing? I mean, I know you're busy now, but are you doing music stuff at all? I mean, are you doing JP Inc. material?
Some, yeah. I mean, like I've done some shows this year. I did a tour with Neil Hamburger a couple months ago, and
Do you record?
not as much anymore.
Right.
I mean, the stuff that I'm doing now has turned into a lot more just visual art,
Yeah.
and I've been working on a book for about a year and a half, 2 years.
Can you talk about it?
Yeah, it's really just it's kind of like it's a coffee table book. It's an art book, but it's sort of the corporate prospectus for this fictional corporation of JP Incorporated, and it's all the products and services, and it's like a catalog.
Nice.
It's really strange, but it's for me, it's really fun. So
Yeah, it's like
because I'm touring so much with other people producing their shows,
Yeah.
that when I'm home, being home is like my vacation, and this is a very zen way for me to sort of create things. And I'm kind of burnt on making music.
So it's like pictures of like parking lots and like complexes and like cubicles. And,
There's some of that. It's mostly like package design for fictional products,
Right.
or kind of advertisements for generic services.
Right.
And some of it's tied together. Some of it reflects old, even like plesiosaur era stuff, like No Problemo.
Yeah. Well, the songs were very product driven.
Everything's like a commercial for something. It's like trying to sell something.
Yeah.
So
did you watch a lot of TV? What were like
as a kid?
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
obviously,
Yeah.
right? I mean, every song is like about TV. So what, like sitcoms and stuff? Or?
Yeah, I was into sitcoms, game shows,
What were
commercials.
Well, yes, of course.
Yeah.
Yeah. What were your shows like? Say when you were middle school, because we're kind of like the same age. I think we're a couple of
Yeah.
years apart.
Yeah.
So growing up in the '80s, basically.
Yeah, I mean, like my sisters and I watched a lot of Different Strokes.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Three's Company.
Those are good themes. Both of those.
Great themes. Silver Spoons.
Yeah, Ricky Schroeder.
Ricky
right?
Schroeder. And then as I got a little older, I was way into the Golden Girls.
Yeah.
as like a young high schooler. Or I remember like Friday night, it was like Golden Girls followed by Empty Nest.
Empty Nest, yeah.
You know,
Right.
starring Joey Suzu, and
And then what was the there's another one that was like right around that block of time about like the single ex-husband or the widower.
Dear John.
Yeah, Dear John.
Yeah, with Judd Hirsch.
Yeah,
Yeah.
love that one.
That was a great show.
So what is
I
this
mean,
all?
it wasn't great, but it was like I watched it.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it was probably just maybe a couple seasons, or maybe it was on for.
It was like 2 seasons.
Right.
Yeah.
So this is like all like NBC, ABC.
Just the basics.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I grew up with cable too. So
Right. Oh, so did you have HBO back then?
we had HBO.
Wow.
And
That's
so
big.
like my friends would come watch HBO on
Yeah.
the weekends at my house, you know.
What was this? I love this HBO show. I can't always try to. I always forget rather the title, but it's set in New York. It was like a TV writer in New York. It was an early HBO half an hour comedy.
Late at night.
It was that wasn't the name of it, but yeah.
No, but it
Yeah,
was like
it had like
late at
it
night.
had like adult themes.
Dream On.
Yes, that's what it was.
Yeah.
love
My
that.
friend Paul used to come over. We would watch Dream On because you could see boobs.
Right? Yeah. It's funny. It was a comedy that like they kind of worked in some sex.
There was
like,
some sex stuff. Yeah.
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 and like that was a great opening theme with the kid in front of the TV.
Totally.
Yeah, I love that show. I'd love to be able to see that again.
Yeah.
Watch
It
that.
probably wouldn't hold up, but
No, not at all. I mean, it's like 1990 or something like that.
Yeah,
And I
something
think
like that.
Early 90s.
yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I watched so much TV growing up too. It's like, your siblings are older than you. Yeah.
Yeah. I have 2 older sisters.
Yeah, it was the same for me. My brother's 8 years older than me, so he was already kind of out, and then so I just spent a lot of time watching TV. I watched a lot of Unsolved Mysteries. I love that show.
I like that show too.
I recently, it's like they kind of re-released the first like 4 seasons or something, the early Robert Stack years, and like of course the theme is like impenetrable, like
Yeah.
how effective it is.
So good.
Oh yeah, it's terrifying.
Yeah.
And but the first like season or 2, they're like reenacting the things with like the actual people, like and I think it's shot on 16 too. It's pretty like chilling stuff because they're like people that have like family members murdered and they're like reenacting the scenes.
But it seemed like it was the first time anybody was doing something like that.
Oh yeah.
I mean, as far as I know, or I can remember, like a
was shocking.
reenactment kind of,
Oh yeah.
where they were talking about what you thought were real life incidences.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. Definitely. Yeah, there was a lot of very influential things on TV. Like Quantum Leap, did you like that? Did you watch that?
Yeah, I liked the theme song.
Yeah, it was a great theme and opening.
Yeah, I liked it. I liked it later. There were some shows that I didn't like as a kid that I wound up liking later.
Right.
Like MASH. I became a big
Did
fan
you?
of MASH. But I didn't like it as a kid. It was so like brown and drab and
Definitely.
Yeah.
Me too. Yeah, I don't like it.
oh, it's so good.
Yeah. Well,
So
how many
smart.
seasons? There's like
There's like
20.
There's a lot, but I think I've seen all the episodes.
Yeah.
It's so good.
Well, it's like a really historic show too. It's like groundbreaking,
Totally groundbreaking.
record breaking. I think for like
The finale and
right, it was like the most watched thing on TV ever or something.
yeah.
Yeah, I gotta go back to MASH. I haven't gone back. To
It's quite beautifully done.
Right.
Like I've cried at MASH before.
I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah.
I mean, it's an American tale.
It is.
There's
It
probably a reason why it was as popular as it was.
Yeah,
I mean,
it was really, really well done.
Yeah.
That's what my opinion.
Right. So what's the so visually you're working on visual stuff, so it's really like, is it for you're helping create the stage show or lay out the stage show for other artists, or what is it for you now that you're working on?
Yeah, I mean the last few years, I started, I guess about 6 years ago. That band Pinback
Yeah.
needed a tour manager.
Right.
Pinch.
Yeah, I remember.
And I was like, I'll do it.
I mean, yeah, you'd been on tour enough. You got it.
Yeah,
you settled enough.
I thought that I could figure it out, and
you advanced all your shows. And
yeah,
stuff,
I kind of ran with it,
Right.
and they were dealing with a lot more money and, gear and logistics than I like, and buses and things like that,
Yeah.
than I had ever dealt with. But I tried it. I really liked it, and then people that kind of went around, like word got around, and I started getting all these offers from bands.
Right.
And I didn't like. I stopped enjoying the band thing. Like,
Right.
I worked with people I didn't know, and I didn't enjoy that.
Sure. Well, people start hearing, oh, you have a good tour manager, like,
Yeah.
you can stay on the road.
Totally. And I didn't want to do that. I loved touring with Pinback because they're like family.
Right.
But dealing with other people, I won't name the bands. But,
Yeah. I get it. I get it. It's not a great. I mean, it can be, especially. It depends on the company you're with, but it can be either probably a pleasurable job,
Sure.
or a total pain in the ass.
Totally.
Because
And
there's a
it's-
lot of work. The tour manager is responsible for everything.
Yeah.
So.
And then I took a little break and I started doing more shows for myself again.
Right.
And then people started calling, like Tim and Eric were like, how, and it goes back to like, my thing was never that popular, but the right people liked it.
Right.
And the messaging was essentially, we like your show. Can you help us make make a crazy show for us? Or make our show crazier.
Right.
In the case of Tim and Eric,
Sure.
crazier and more logistically sound.
Yeah.
And then other people started touring, like TV shows, and that kind of became my niche.
Doing like the touring sort of comedy TV show.
Yep.
Yeah.
So then, like Bob's Burgers called,
Right,
And
right.
I started producing those tours, and Eric Andre,
Yeah.
and I've now done stuff for Judd Apatow and
Great. For his stand-up?
his stand-up, but like stuff for HBO and
Oh, nice.
the live components for like the in promotion for HBO.
right.
And and it's good. I mean, I have a lot of creative input, and I have the budget to like do stuff that I would do for myself.
Well, that's amazing.
Yeah. If I had the audience, I would do it for, but
Are you applying some of those like original concepts to what you're doing now?
sure.
I mean, watching last night's show. I mean, there's the screen is a big part of the show. There's
Yeah.
a lot of costume changes.
Those
Tim and
guys
Eric-
have been doing that their whole time.
Right.
I didn't, and they know what they are doing.
Yeah.
And they don't need me to tell them like, hey, why don't we have a screen and
Of
like
course.
show content?
right.
Well, some people do need that.
Sure. That kind of suggestion.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My working relationship with Tim and Eric is, they really know what they want and what they're doing. And I think as a performer, and then I can give them input as to what works and what maybe doesn't. And they either accept my input or not.
Right. How much do you and Doug do work together? Because he's obviously controlling a lot on stage too, right?
Yeah, Doug is controlling all the cues.
Yeah.
And then I'm directing from off stage. I do all the lighting cues, and direct the stage.
Yeah.
And then I play. The previous tours I've played more characters.
You have one
Yeah,
though.
so- Well, I mean, I come out.
But you do one voiceover too, if I'm not
Oh,
mistaken.
I do. Yeah, I do. I do play the voice of Chad, the AEG promoter.
Yes. Which for
You heard my voice.
well, absolutely, I
Yeah.
caught it right away.
Yeah.
And I told Laura, yeah, that's JP. But I mean, for someone that works,
And I'm also playing keyboards off stage
are you? Oh, okay, nice.
during the band segment.
Yeah. But for Chad, the AEG like promoter or talent buyer or whomever, whatever's role, one, like the image that correlates with that is absolutely hilarious and spot on.
Totally.
But for someone that works in that world, it's very fulfilling to see someone like that be kind of like, put on
Called out.
Yeah, big time.
Yeah.
I think it's hilarious, and that's who the promoter of the show is.
Totally. Yeah.
And that's for the whole tour. If I'm not, is that for the?
Yeah.
So every night you guys have that going.
We do that every night.
I love it.
Yeah. And we've done that. We did that 3 years ago. We had Chad from AEG, and then we did a Live Nation tour in Australia, and we had Chad from Live Nation.
Ha. Right.
So I'm the voice of Chad.
Yeah, it's good. It's spot on, and you're kind. It's like you're not like you could completely destroy it.
He's a cool guy. Like he's got
Oh.
his Bluetooth headset, and he's
Yeah.
like wearing a suit and Brooks Brothers, and
Oh yeah, he's ready to roll. I mean, I'm sure that
he's got like a VIP section backstage.
yeah, all roped off
Yeah,
with
it's
his
all
name on a piece of
velvet
paper.
rope. Yeah,
Long before he arrives. Yeah,
totally.
yeah,
Yeah.
It's all access.
Prime seating.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah,
Better fucking have that ready. When he gets
Oh,
there, or there's hell to pay
exactly.
to the TM.
To me.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, it works that you're him too, so you guys can have that inner dialogue and
Yes.
figure it out.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I love that shit, dude. I love the show, and just to see that that there is your involvement is in this sort of tertiary way, in a way that's like it's extra fulfilling for me because I know like the history of all that stuff, and it's dope. I mean, I'd love to know a little bit about the other ones too, because I mean, the Eric Andre has like a completely different kind of live show. It's just more like him running madly around on stage. And shit, right?
It's pretty chaotic, or it's seemingly chaotic.
Yeah.
It's really controlled chaos.
Yeah,
I'm essentially doing the role of like a Doug person, with doing all video, audio, offstage characters, and then running and lighting cues, managing the stage.
is there a lot of stuff going on?
There's a lot going
I've
on.
never had a chance to see him play, but
Yeah, he destroys his set 3 times during the course of like an hour.
right.
And so we have to travel with 3 disposable talk show sets.
But I mean, if you're doing a succession of consecutive shows, I mean, what do you travel with 24 of them, or like
Yeah, you ship pallets
Yeah.
of fake desks.
nice?
Yeah.
That's fun. Do you set those up?
Well, I don't. I have an assistant who builds them.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Yeah, because but that again, it's usually like a party of 4 or 5. With that's like the same amount of people as with
4
Tim and Eric.
people.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
But when I first started working with Eric, it was, really all these guys, like Bob's Burgers had done a tour that Fox produced.
Yeah.
Eric Andre did, I think, 1 or 2 tours that Adult Swim produced. And these were like 12 to 15 person crews, and
Wow.
nobody's really doing anything. And it was barely happening,
Right.
And it was like more of a mess. And from what I hear,
Yeah, I can see that. There's too many people, too many cooks in the kitchen.
too many cooks, and like nobody wants to take responsibility for anything.
Right.
And I remember the first show I did with Eric Andre it was in Canada, and he walked into the venue to like sound check, and he's like, I can't believe that it's set up and it looks amazing, and there's 2 of you.
Right.
And he called the agent, and like he's like, this is it. He's like, this is fantastic. He's
Nice.
like, thank you for finding this producer.
That's amazing.
So
Right. I mean, it's not that different from just the punk rock style of doing shows.
you just got to do it. You got to show up. You got to like set your shit up.
Yeah, load in, set up, advance the show, and run it. And even with last night, it's not a big crew of people. I mean, it's 6 people, including a merch person, right?
Exactly.
So 6 people with Tim and Eric, Doug Pound, you, and then there's another fellow. And
Yeah, Mikey, and merch guy Tony.
yeah.
So
I mean, and for it to be in theaters, and it's like this is like you have about a month to do,
yeah, we have like 25 shows left.
and it just started, though, right?
Yeah,
Couple
this
shows
is our
in.
first week.
Yeah, that's amazing.
So
How does it feel for you?
it's all right.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
I mean,
rolling, starting
it's
up
rolling.
good.
No, like the shows have been fantastic.
Yes.
Everybody's fun to be around.
Yeah,
And I always feel very triumphant leaving New York City.
Oh yeah, I understand that feeling.
I love being here, but I also it's hard when you have responsibility.
Yeah.
And you have like a big van or a bus or a fucking semi to deal with in Midtown Manhattan.
Are you guys in a bus for this?
No, we're in a Sprinter
Right. So
and flying around.
yeah, so that has its own set of challenges
Yeah.
too. You know, a bus, you'd be parked out in New Jersey somewhere and someone would come and get you or whatever.
Yep.
Here, it's like, yeah, and you're driving?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, that's...
So
That's tricky.
It's a lot, but it's once you get the van parked and we're here for 3 days,
Yeah.
like I can kind of settle in.
Yeah. As much as you can
much
settle
as you-
in Times Square.
Exactly. Yeah, we're in a high-rise hotel in Times Square
Right.
behind the theater. And
Yeah.
it's like pretty silly.
Yeah. But you're making it work, and I love the show. It was awesome.
I'm glad.
Yeah. Yeah. So I know a lot of hard work went into it.
Yeah, those guys work their asses off.
Yeah.
And
You can tell.
and they don't stop. Like if they're not making a TV show, they're doing a book. If they're not doing a book, they're working on individual projects or
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, yeah, for sure.
I'm
There's-
proud that everyone is that I'm even in the same conversation as people as prolific and with such attention to detail as like Greg Turkington or
Yeah.
Tim or Eric Andre, like any of these people, Doug, like they're all like at the top of their game as far as being fucking creative individuals,
Absolutely. Yeah, have inspired a lot of people under them.
They've inspired me. I have maybe inspired them, and I am, just grateful to be in the mix of it all.
Nice.
So
I'm grateful to talk to you. And I haven't seen you in a long time.
I know.
I think the last time I saw you, if I'm not mistaken, was at when you played with Devo. You opened for Devo. Maybe there was a time.
I think we've seen
after-
each other since then.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In here in New York somewhere.
Yeah. Unfortunately, not back in California, which is where I'd like to
I know.
hang out next time.
Yeah. You should be living in California.
I know. I should.
I've told you that before.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thanks so much, dude. I appreciate your time and all the best with these tours and the
Thank you.
book.
Thank you.
And I loved you in entertainment.
Oh. My prison.
That was another thing where I was with my
Prison.
girlfriend. I was like, look, there he is. And then
That's funny.
what? I saw your hair.
My hair is
And the side of your face was
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, cool, man. Thank you again, and
Thank you.
Hope to see you soon.
Yeah.
Yes, awesome. Thank you very much to JP. Thanks so much for being a guest on the House List. I appreciate you guys for listening to this. I'm going to come with another new episode very soon. I think next week we're going to do 2. I might even drop another one before next week. You never know. I got a lot. I just came from California. I recorded a bunch of different conversations out there with a range of people on music and film. But I'm back in New York, and we recorded this in New York not that long ago when Tim and Eric passed right through town. Catch them on tour. See the tour dates at timanderic.com, and you can find JP Inc., as we mentioned, playing the role of Scott from AEG, which is hilarious to me. I found particular joy in that portrayal, and it was quite accurate, in fact. And listen, if this is your very first time tuning in, scroll back. There's a bunch of different kinds of conversations, both with people behind the scenes in music as well as artists themselves, a range of genre, and so forth. So if you're listening in iTunes, just hit that subscribe button. Otherwise, please get the word out. I appreciate it. You can find us on Twitter at HouselessPod, and I'll leave you at that. But before I go, I'm going to leave you with a song from JP's Comedy Central album from 2009, if I'm not mistaken, an album of distinction. And this is Heels and Hoops, one of my favorite joints off that, produced by JP Incorporated. It's on iTunes. You can find it. Check it out. Otherwise, if you can, go to jpinc.tv. That's jpinc.tv for any updates on tour dates. Catch him live if you can. I'm telling you, it's awesome and entertaining. He's a brilliant comedic mind. Catch him when you can. He often tours with Neil Hamburger too, which is an incredible pairing. And I love the family that JP is a part of, from Neil Hamburger, Tim Heidecker, and Tim and Eric, and on, DJ Doug Pound. All hilarious and very amazing, unique voices in comedy that should be paid attention to, and you should spread the word if you're not familiar with them. So anyway, check them out, and especially my man JP Inc. Plesiosaur. Thank you so much for your time. Let's go into this really quickly, and I'll see you guys next episode.
She drives a sexy pink convertible with rusted truck wheels.
I'm a lady past the ball, wear a pantsuit from the mall, coaching basketball. It's Billy Hardwood.
The adopted kids and tasty dinner with her like partner
We used to
Chris.
ball for Carolina, they still talk about my vagina. Heard they built the Shriner to Billy